Back with more of a Thursday edition of Southern Fried Sports right here on Tide 102.9 and 100.9 FM, your home for University of Alabama Athletics. Travis Reier, Senior Analyst for BamaOnline.com, part of the 247sports.com network, here with you as I am each and every weekday morning from 11 a.m. until noon. And with that, it is my pleasure to bring on a colleague of mine from BamaOnline.com, a busy individual this time of year, really any time of year, it seems like, in the recruiting industry. These days is a busy time, but with that, we welcome in Hank South. Hank, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you?
Cannot complain, my friend. I'll tell you someone else who can't complain right now is Antonio Alfano, the Alabama defensive line signee. He's actually an early enrollee already on campus here in Tuscaloosa, the New Jersey native, who, as I recall, Hank, at the time of his commitment to Alabama, was a highly regarded prospect. I mean, this guy was thought to be one of the better defensive linemen for the class of 2019, but you were out there in San Antonio a couple of weeks ago, and I guess it was just an incredible performance because he's not only considered at this point now to be one of the very best at his position, in these latest 247sports.com rankings, I guess he's considered to be the top overall prospect in the country.
Yeah, that was his goal heading into the All-American Bowl earlier this month in San Antonio. He was number 8 at the time by 247 Sports. He said he wanted to be number 1, and a lot of people questioned whether you could make that jump from 8 to 1, and he went on the field that week and kind of just proved why he should be. And I know when they unveiled the rankings earlier this week, 247 Sports' director of scouting, Barton Simmons, said you turn on his tape and there's just no flaw in this kid's game. He said that you try to find a flaw and you just can't. He checks all the boxes: size, measurables, speed, the power. He's just a dominant defensive lineman. And at the high school level, a dominant offensive lineman as well. He had like 42 pancake blocks this season as an offensive lineman. So, he certainly stated his case at the All-American Bowl, but that also goes along with what he did his senior season. His stat line was insane. He had, I think, over 10 sacks, crazy number of tackles for a loss. So he certainly proved his case to earn that spot at number 1. And I think he's a guy, he's already on campus. He's already working out with the team. He's a guy that I could see getting on the field early at Alabama.
As you know, Hank, the lines of scrimmage are typically a tough place for newcomers to make a big impact. You might see a true freshman defensive lineman or offensive lineman, more so probably even the defensive side. You do see freshman offensive tackles. We've seen it around here at Alabama, even at the left tackle position in the past, step right in and play. But typically on the defensive side, it's tough for those guys to be something more than situational players. But from what I'm hearing from Bart Simmons, from you, and looking at what Alabama must replace at a couple of spots up front for the 2019 season, I guess it isn't all that far-fetched to think that Antonio Alfano will quickly make a big impression on this Alabama defensive front.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could say beyond just Antonio Alfano, I think it's important that Raekwon Davis is coming back. Obviously, had he not, you're looking at replacing all 3 starters along your defensive line, and they signed the guys that could potentially step in and do it. It's just that's a tall task when you're asking true freshmen to come in there and compete early to get on the field. But even with Raekwon coming back, you've got a guy like Alfano. He's going to get a semester under his belt, get in the weights program and all that. You got a guy like Justin Eboigbe, who some think is the most college-ready looking prospect in the class as far as he just looks the part. And he certainly he plays it too. He was the Class 6A Defensive Player of the Year in Georgia this past season, and he's another guy that's already on campus working out with the team. Then you got a guy like Byron Young who's currently committed. He's not signed, but it appears as though he's still pretty firm with Alabama and looks likely to sign on February 6th with Bama. He's another guy. He struggled a little bit early at the All-American Bowl. I think just the level of competition on that first day kind of, it took him a minute to adjust. But once he adjusted, he was one of the more dominant defensive linemen there. And so you look at those 3 guys, and I'm not saying all of them are going to start as freshmen. Obviously, that's not possible. But all those guys, they're going to add depth at the very least and certainly push the others in that position group. And I think we'll all have really successful careers at Alabama.
Yeah, you combine these newcomers, these incoming guys, with Davis, with Fedarian Mathis, with LeBron Ray. Your expectation is that Christian Barmore, Stephon Wynn Jr., a couple of 2018 signees take the next step. And if you're an Alabama fan, you start to feel a lot better about where that defensive line is headed, given the departures of Isaiah Buggs and Quinnen Williams. Now, in addition to Antonio Alfano, Hank, I guess a couple of these 2019 members of this Alabama signing class elevated themselves to five-star status, right?
Yeah, that's right. So two guys we already talked about Evan Neal being a five-star. He was a composite five-star, one of the top offensive tackles in the country. 24/7 Sports had him just outside that range at number 34. He ended up getting that fifth star after his performance at the Under Armour All-America game earlier this month, and obviously his senior tape. He's in at number 32, so he got that five-star grade and moved up in the 24/7 Sports composite as well. And Jeffrey Carter, he was a guy that was actually he was number 29 in the nation, so he was in that, top 32 range. He just didn't have the grade yet. He earned that fifth-star grade as well, and he finished at number 30. So both Evan Neal and Jeffrey Carter joined that five-star range by 24/7 Sports. And, of course, Trey Sanders was already a five-star by 24/7. He ended at number 14. So they ended with 4 24/7 Sports five-stars, and I think in the composite they currently have 3 24/7 Sports five-stars. So, regardless, a really elite class with some guys that are potential difference makers at the next level.
I want to circle back a little bit and get back into Byron Young, the defensive line commitment that you just touched on a few minutes ago, in terms of his commitment status, but also Chris Bogle. And you're talking about a couple of front seven defensive pieces for this 2019 class for Alabama. Is there some wavering going on there in your opinion? And if so, who are the primary competitors for Alabama in a potential flip scenario with Bogle and Byron Young?
Yeah, both are still saying they're committed. I think it's easy to say if guys don't sign early, you shouldn't consider them commit. That's fair. With Chris Bogle, he committed at the All-American Bowl earlier this month, so he wasn't committed, so there was really no one to sign with early. I mean, he could have signed, but he opted to commit later. So you can consider him a commit. Byron Young, it's interesting because he didn't sign early, but you talked to him, and he just genuinely wanted to take visits and enjoy his recruitment. He didn't get the chance to do it in the fall as much as he wanted to. His team made a state championship run in Mississippi, so he was playing all the way up until December, and so he really didn't get a chance to see LSU on an official visit, which he wanted to do. He wants to visit the Mississippi schools as well, and that's what he's doing this month. He was at Ole Miss this past weekend. He'll be at Mississippi State this upcoming weekend, and then he plans to go to LSU the final weekend. So you look at that as an Alabama fan, and it makes you a little nervous, I'm sure. But at the same time, he has maintained that he is firm. It's interesting. He has said LSU was his dream school growing up as a kid, but he's one of these guys, kind of like King Mokuda, where, just because it's your dream school doesn't mean it's the best school for you, and I think he kind of recognizes that with Alabama. So we'll see what happens there. Nick Saban is supposed to be in home with him today, along with Pete Golding, so they'll certainly be talking to him. Chris Bogle, that's an interesting case. He committed on January 5th. He committed when Tosh Lupoi was still on the staff, who was one of his main recruiters. He was at the Polynesian Bowl when news broke that Tosh Lupoi was going to the Cleveland Browns. I think they were very surprised by that. He hasn't decommitted or anything, but he's still listening to Miami, and he's still listening to Florida, two schools he had in his top group when he committed to Alabama. Miami, I think, is kind of the most interesting one to watch just because of his relationship with Manny Diaz, and obviously it's right next to his home, so he has that going for him. An interesting little piece, though, his mom actually spoke with us earlier this week, and she said that at this point she's told Chris that just to forget about the coaching, forget about the recruiters, just go to the school that, she wants him to go to the school that's going to develop him best. And she actually said she thinks that's under Nick Saban. So, he's got Bama fans have got Chris Bogle's mom on their side, it looks like at this point. So we'll kind of see what happens with that. He's at Florida this weekend, and then maybe Miami next weekend for an unofficial visit. So the two guys to watch, but I'm not projecting any flips at this point with those two.
As they say, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. So we'll see how much that weighs with Chris Bogle here down the stretch. Now, you touched on Tosh Lapoy moving on to the Cleveland Browns from this Alabama staff. We've seen several coaches move on. We've heard, we've reported at BamaOnline.com several new coaches coming in as a part of Alabama's next staff. Based on what you're seeing on the recruiting trail, have any of the new names that we've reported shown up from that standpoint? Guys on the road, maybe the new assistants that are coming in. Have you tracked any of that here in the last week or so?
Yeah, they haven't been officially announced, but they've certainly hit the ground running in this period of time since they've been reported by them online. Charles Huff, I think, is a really interesting one. He's the running backs coach that came over from, he was a running backs coach at Mississippi State, coming over to Alabama. He's already been in the DMV recruiting for Alabama. He's been in Georgia recruiting for Alabama, and returns already are really positive on him. He was one of their better recruiters. He was at Penn State prior to his time at Mississippi State with Joe Moorhead. So he certainly has ties to that area and a guy who recruits really like. And they actually offered a 2025 star running back, and we talked to him a couple nights ago, and he said with Charles Huff on Bama's staff, it makes him a lot more interested in Alabama because he thinks he's one of the best running backs coaches in the country. So that's interesting to watch. We've seen Kyle Flood up in New York recruiting some guys. We've seen Sal Sinceri go out to Florida to see Chris Bogle along with Joe Panunzio. I've heard that Charles Kelly has been recruiting in the state of Alabama this week. So they're certainly out there getting their faces in schools and in homes for 2019 recruits. And this will be the first weekend that they can be on campus together and host recruits. So it's an important time to kind of get that relationship building going. Obviously for the 2019 class to close out this class strong and to also set a foundation for 2020 and beyond to let these guys coming in for junior day and let these younger guys get to know this staff and kind of get familiar with Alabama again now that these coaches have left.
Talking with Hank South, recruiting analyst for BamaOnline.com. It's Southern Fried Sports, presented by Cartier and Lloyd Attorneys at Law, and also our great friends at Mercedes-Benz of Tuscaloosa. Hank, as we let you go here, obviously a big weekend on tap for Alabama official visitors. I believe you have 5 official visitors coming to Tuscaloosa this weekend, but I believe it also coincides with a Junior Day event. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. So they always do. Bama typically does a Junior Day in January right before signing day, and then they do one in February. That January one's usually a little less of a turnout, and in February they have a number of underclassmen on campus as they get towards spring practice.
What about the official visitors? Obviously, I guess when you really look at the defensive side of the ball especially, that seems to be the common theme here as Alabama looks to close out 2019. Some especially important visitors, I would guess, on that side of the ball.
Absolutely, and I think you start at the top of the list, Henry To'oTo'o, the 4-star linebacker from California. Alabama wasn't able to sign Nakobe Dean back in December. He opted for Georgia. Obviously, Henry To'oTo'o was already a priority target at that time too, but he becomes even more so of a priority target now, especially with missing on Dean and then and Mack Wilson declaring early for the NFL draft. So certainly a position of need. They need to add at least one more guy to join Shane Lee and Christian Harris in the class, or at least it looks like. And so he'll be on campus, and it's also an important visit considering like we said earlier, Tosh Lapoy has left the staff. He was Henry To'oTo'o's primary recruiter. He had that De La Salle High School connection with him. And so that was something, it's not a make or break thing for Alabama with Henry To'oTo'o, but, if you ask Tennessee fans, it is. But Pete Golding has been out in California to see him. Nick Saban will have an in-home with him next week. They got him on campus this weekend. And so, I think Henry To'oTo'o is a guy that sees Alabama more so for the program than one coach, and I think that's important, obviously, in this scenario. And I think they have a chance to hit a home run with him and his family on the visit this weekend. And then another big target, obviously, Ishmael Sopsher, literally a big target. The 4-star defensive tackle from Louisiana. He's expected on campus as Alabama kind of fights LSU to sign him, and so we'll see what happens. They have this stellar defensive line class already in place, but they're still trying to add to it, and certainly Ishmael Sopsher would make it that much better. There's a few others, some guys we talked about here and there on Bama Online. that are obviously important guys. They're having them in on official visits, so they're ones to watch. But I think the two most important, in my opinion, Henry To'oTo'o and Ishmael Sopsher this weekend.
Yeah, and for a complete rundown of official visitors to the University of Alabama this weekend, be sure to check out Hank's update there at BamaOnline.com. You can find it right now on the website. Also give Hank a follow on Twitter at HankSouth247. Hank, we'll let you get back to it. As always, my friend, we appreciate the help. We appreciate the insight. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Travis.
There he goes, Hank South, recruiting analyst for BamaOnline.com. Back with more of Southern Fried Sports on a Thursday morning on Tide 102.9 and 100.9 FM right after this.